What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GA Fan TV. I hope the form is good. I hope the form is well. It's the final day of the round robins in the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship, the final day of the Leinster Championship, and the final day in the Munster Championship. And it poses to be a very exciting weekend indeed. I mean, in Munster, you still really don't know what's going to happen. Clare are guaranteed to obviously play in a Munster final. Will it be Limerick joining them? Will it be Tipperary? There is an outside chance that Cork could get in there as well. I mean, it's still all to play for. Could the All-Ireland champions possibly get knocked out of the championship this weekend, which would be absolutely mental? And then at Leinster, we know who the top three will be, but we don't know in what order. Will it be Kilkenny and Galway in the Leinster final, or can Dublin upset the odds and beat Galway in Croke Park this weekend? And relegation very much still in the balance as well. Wexford, after that defeat to Westmeath last weekend, could they possibly face relegation from the Leinster Championship? Absolutely mental. Antrim are playing Westmeath as well. A huge, huge game. And can Westmeath get their second win on the bounce in the Leinster Championship? We wouldn't have said that a couple of weeks ago. So certainly a lot to discuss. We'll be looking at the Joe McDonagh Cup Final as well. Carlow and Offaly. Big game. Carlow obviously back in the Joe McDonagh Cup Final. And Offaly, can they continue their rise through the ranks? So here we go then, the preview for the final round of the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship round robins. Let's do this. So let's remind ourselves of how things look in the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. That is what we will be starting with. We've got Clare sitting on top with 6 points. They can't, I'm not too sure. Actually, if Tipperary win, they could finish above Clare. But Clare are guaranteed to be in the Munster final. So it doesn't really matter if you finish first or second, in fairness. And other than that, look, it's right down to the wire. You've got Tipperary sitting there on 4 points. You've got Cork sitting there with 3 points. And you've got Limerick sitting there with 3 points as well. Even looking at the score difference, like very, very little between the opening four sides. And poor Waterford sitting down near the bottom with no points so far from 3 matches. And unfortunately for them, their game this weekend will be somewhat meaningless. So we can see there it's Tipperary versus Waterford in Semple Stadium and Limerick versus Cork in the Gaelic grounds. Looking at Tipperary versus Waterford, first of all, I mean, look, it's a big game for Tipperary. And look, Waterford, to be fair, have had a very disappointing season. They've had a very disappointing campaign. But in fairness to Waterford, like, this is a game I think they should get up for. I mean, Liam Cahill obviously left Waterford for Tipperary, let's not forget. Like, Waterford will want to be the team to put Liam Cahill's Tipperary possibly out of the championship. Like, if results go a certain way, like, it is unlikely that Tipperary miss out in the top 3, even if they actually get beaten, because what you would actually possibly need to happen is for Cork and Limerick to draw. But even at that, Tipperary have a better score difference than Limerick. So Tipperary, I'm pretty sure it will be getting out anyway. They just might be prevented in getting to a Munster final. But in saying that, look, I think Tipperary will be too strong for Waterford. I know Waterford might get up for it. The game obviously being played in Thurles, and Waterford are quite used to playing there now over the last couple of weeks. They want to end the season on a high. Like, Davy has no love lost between himself and Tipperary, in fairness, and I'm sure he'll want to dish Tipperary a bit of a big blow. But I think Waterford just have not been at it at all this year. Like, the fight levels haven't been there. Their star players haven't been performing. Like the likes of Desi Hutchinson, we don't hear much of. Caleb Lyons, Ozzie Gleeson, these lads who we're so used to seeing perform at the highest level. And it just hasn't been right for Waterford. Like, it's been an absolute nosedive in terms of a collapse from the round robin last year. You think back to 15, 16 months ago, after they won that league title, Waterford were tipped as the team to possibly go on and win the All-Ireland and be the closest challengers to Limerick. But they've just absolutely fallen off the boil. Tipperary have a wealth of options, whether it be Garrod O'Connor, Jake Morris, Mark Keogh, Connor Bowe. Will he start in this game after the impact he made coming off the bench? You've got Noel and John McGrath, who even, after, who've been in this panel for God knows how long now, they're still shooting the lights out for Tipperary and having big performances. So I think Tipperary, with it being at home, with there being the fact that they win, they're in a Munster final, it's pretty self-explanatory, pretty as simple as that. I think they will go and do so, to be honest with you. For Waterford, like, it's hard to see who the threat would be. Like, Stephen Bennett, like, he has been scoring a lot from frees, but from play probably hasn't been doing enough. I think Tipperary will be far too strong. I think Waterford will stick with Tipperary for the opening half, but I think the more the game goes on, Tipperary will pull away, and I think they'll win it by 6 points. Limerick versus Cork is the next one, and it's a big game, obviously, for Limerick. I mean, if they lose this, they could very well be out of the championship, and a draw even as well could actually possibly be enough, because like, if you look at the league table, we'll throw it back on the screen once again, Cork do have a better score difference than Limerick, so Limerick have to win. A draw here will not be enough for the All-Ireland champions. It will be Cork who will progress, and that's regardless of what happens between Waterford and Tipperary, because as we said, Tipperary already have 4 points on the board. They have a better score difference than Limerick. Like, if Waterford were to beat Tipperary by a 4 or 5 point margin, that would drag Tipperary's score difference down. So that might be enough for Limerick. So actually, there is a scenario where Tipperary don't get through, but it is quite an unlikely scenario because you need a lot of certain things to happen, in fairness. But Limerick's record against Cork in the championship in recent years has been very strong. They blew Cork away last year in the opening day of the Munster round robin. They blew Cork away in the 2021 All-Ireland final as well. I know Cork had the better of them in the league on the first day. How much you can read into that, I don't really know, because Limerick didn't have their best players available to them. Although you could argue Limerick looked a lot better in the league this year than they have so far in the championship. I'm expecting big things from Limerick, to be honest with you. Like, we need to see more of Gearóid Hegarty, Cian Lynch. These lads just haven't really shown enough from a Limerick perspective, in my opinion. I think Tom Morrissey grew into the game the more that the match went on. Aaron Galland, as we know, he's a bit of an unsung hero in this Limerick side. I don't think he got enough service the last day. Even players like Dermot Burns have been missing frees. Like, I don't know what it is with Limerick. We just haven't quite seen enough from them so far. Their intensity seems to be flat. They seem to tire at times. The way they battled back against Tipperary, I think, was a good sign, because when Barry Nash got sent off and they went down to 14 men, you were thinking, like, I don't see a way back for them here. Like, they're 2 points down in injury time, down to 14 men. How did they turn it around? And they came roaring back to go 3 points up, and eventually Tipperary leveled it with that late John McGrath point. They're still doing a lot right, Limerick, but it's just not that brilliance of Limerick that we've quite seen. But, like, if they can start fast, with it being the Gaelic grounds, with their recent record of blowing Cork away, I think we will see a big performance here from Limerick. Like, this is a knockout game, like an absolute knockout game. Whoever loses is gone, and I think you'd expect to see Limerick bring that intensity, in my opinion, because, look, regardless of getting to a Munster final, I think there's bigger fish to fry here. And for Limerick, it's huge for them to get out of this Munster round robin. To not get out of it and get knocked out, it will be a huge setback. Look, their All-Ireland record will be gone. The 3 in a row record would be over. There'll be no chance of 4 in a row. But also, as well, it might set Limerick back, even next year. So it's a huge game. In fairness to Cork, though, like, I think it's very unlucky that there's a team that's going to finish in 4th that is going to get knocked out of the championship, because the team in 4th is better, in my opinion, than the team who finishes 3rd in Leinster. And that's, coming from a Dublin fan. Like, if Dublin finished 3rd, there's no way we would, if it's Cork or Limerick, there's no way Dublin would beat either of them, in my opinion. And it does beg the question, like, should we have a scenario where the team that finishes 4th in Munster plays a playoff with the team who finishes 3rd in Leinster? It's an interesting opinion. The only sort of caveat to that is, you have a Munster championship where 4 teams could get through, and it sort of it could ruin that competitiveness, in my opinion. But it's an interesting opinion. Be curious to know what people think about that. In fairness to Cork, one thing we know about them, and one thing I'd be confident of seeing, is that they won't lie down against Limerick as they have in previous years in the championship. Cork are at their best when they're chasing a game, as we've seen against Tipperary, as we've seen against Clare as well. Declan Dalton and Dara Fitzgibbon have been 2 of their top players this year. Patrick Horgan always standing up. There does seem to be a bit of an over-reliance on him at the best of times from the Rebels. And Kingston coming off the bench could make a huge impact as well. But I think Limerick being at home at the Gaelic grounds, I do fancy them to be too strong, to be honest with you. Would it be knockout? I don't think it will be by much. I think it will be 3 points. And I think Cork will cause Limerick a lot of problems. And look, how big would it be for Cork to be the team to knock Limerick out of the championship officially, especially after what happened in 2021, what happened last year? I think Limerick need their big players to step up, and I think that they will. I think you'll see Gerard Hegarty step up. I think you'll see Cian Lynch perform. Cole Hayes, I think, will have a big game in this one as well. Obviously the absence of Sean Finn is huge, and I think that could cause big problems in terms of how they deal with Cork's attack and Patrick Horgan, and even the likes of Shane Kingston when he's coming off late on. But I do fancy Limerick to be just that bit too strong, and I think they'll beat Cork by 3 points. I think the home advantage will be key, and I just think Limerick will be a bit more... They'll just have that edge. I just think they'll have that edge. Like, as good as Cork have looked at times this year, I think they've lacked that sort of killer instinct in the big moments, and I think that will be the difference between the two teams. I really do. So looking at the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship then, as you can see there, Kilkenny, Galway and Dublin already guaranteed to finish in the top 3. In what order remains to be seen. Obviously, Kilkenny are guaranteed to play in a Leinster final regardless of what happens, because Dublin are playing Galway, and obviously Dublin versus Galway playing this weekend at Croke Park. And obviously relegation very much still up for grabs. Wexford are taking on Kilkenny, and of course Westmeath are playing Antrim. So some big games taking place there. Looking at Dublin and Galway, first of all, happening at Croke Park. I will be at the game. Obviously, it's a double header with the Dublin Roscommon match in Croke Park. I'm going to miss the action from the Munster Championship, unfortunately, which is unfortunate. But yeah, look at Dublin's record against Galway at home in the last couple of years hasn't been too bad. I mean, we beat them in 2021 in the Leinster semi-finals. This game very much is a Leinster semi-final as well, in fairness, although a draw would be enough for Galway. And obviously we beat them in Parnell Park, I think in 2019 as well, and that was actually when Micheál Donoghue was actually Galway manager. That was actually his last game in charge of Galway as well. So look, Micheál Donoghue, he'll know a good chunk of these Galway players. Obviously Galway's team has changed quite a bit. Like Brian Concannon's come in, you've got Evan Nyland. Like, it's a much more younger and fresher Galway side now than that in 2019. So, but look, Micheál Donoghue will know a lot of the players, obviously, from managing a club level, and he'll be very familiar with a lot of those Galway lads, in fairness. And looking at Galway, like, I think as much as I'd love to see Dublin do it, like, in fairness to Dublin and in fairness to ourselves, like, I think when we drew against Antrim on the opening day, there was a little bit of worry there from myself that we weren't going to get out of, the Leinster round robin. It was going to be very tough for us. I think we've been helped with the fact that Westmeath obviously turned over Wexford. But in fairness to ourselves, look, we showed a lot of character to dig in deep against Wexford and get that victory. And I think even against Kilkenny, we showed a lot of positive signs. And I think there was a lot of good things about Dublin's performance that day. Donald Burke was excellent. Keane Boland has been one of Dublin's top performers this day, or this year, I should say. Alex Considine has looked very strong as well. And we dug in. We didn't roll over against Kilkenny. And that was, for me, a positive. Like, so often Kilkenny have just beaten us by 10, 15 points, and we've just been absolutely hammered out the gate. We were somewhat competitive in this game. Kilkenny still looked very comfortable, and they never really looked like losing the game. But the fact we were able to stick with Kilkenny, albeit Kilkenny probably maybe have their eyes sort of fixated towards a Leinster final and probably towards the All-Ireland series, and certainly weren't their absolute brilliant best. But the fact we dug in and we made a bit of a game out of it, in my opinion, was good to see. Galway are very strong though, and their goal threat is one of the things that I think will be big worrying from a Dublin perspective. Galway scored 6 goals against Westmeath, 5 against Antrim as well. The likes of Conor Whelan, Brian Concannon, all been shooting the lights out in terms of goal. Pádraig Mannion's look very good. So it's going to be tough for us. And like, the only thing that I think might maybe work in our favour from a Dublin perspective is maybe the fact that, like, Galway might maybe have their eyes looking towards a possible Leinster final. Like, interestingly enough, like, I was actually looking back at the league table there. So there's a scenario where Kilkenny, we basically need Kilkenny to beat Wexford, because if Kilkenny beat Wexford, they go to 9 points. And then if Dublin beat Galway, we'll go above them on the head-to-head. But actually, if Kilkenny were to get beat by Wexford and all sides were to finish on 7 points, it would still be Galway and Kilkenny who would progress to the Leinster final. So I've just clocked that actually Dublin could win this weekend and possibly still not get to a Leinster final, which would be very unfortunate. But are Wexford going to beat Kilkenny? I think that would be very tough to happen, in fairness, especially after what happened last weekend. But yeah, maybe the fact that Galway are very likely to play in a Leinster final, even if they possibly lose. So could they maybe be fixated towards that Leinster final? Could they take their eyes off the ball ever so slightly? I don't think they will, to be honest with you. I think Henry Shefflin will have them up for it. I think there's enough competition in that Galway squad for places. As much as I'd love to see us Stubbs do it, I think with us being at Croke Park, I think that will suit Galway more, to be honest with you. I can see them picking us off. I think our defence won't be strong enough to keep out the likes of Brian Concannon, Evan Nyland, Conor Whelan as well. And this Galway side are hungry for goals. They're hungry to win a Leinster title. I think they'll be bang up for it. And I think it just will be very tough for us to stop Galway. And Dublin have had a lot of intense games in the last couple of weeks. Kilkenny and Wexford, 2 tough games. I just have a funny feeling that our energy levels might drop in the final sort of quarter of the game. And I think Galway will pull away. So I'm going to go for an 8-point victory for Galway. I think Dublin might have some bright sparks. And if we're going to do anything big, we're going to need goals from the likes of Alex Considine, Donald Burke, need Ronan Hayes to step up as well. But I think Galway will just be far too strong. And unfortunately for Dublin, we'll go into the we'll go into the All-Ireland stage playing, I think, the Joe McDonagh Cup winners, and then possibly the Munster runners-up, Munster finals runners-up. So that's going to be, that's not going to be great. But yeah, I think Galway will be too strong here. We'll live in hope. You never know. We have a good record against Galway at home, but I think Galway will be just too strong here. As for Wexford Kilkenny, the game obviously taking place at Wexford Park. Wexford beaten by Westmeath, as we very well know, last week in one of the all-time shocks in the All-Ireland Hurling Championship. To throw a 17-point lead to Westmeath, I think, honestly, one of the biggest comeback wins in the history of the All-Ireland Championship, if not the biggest, and possibly one of the biggest sort of leads to ever throw away as well. Absolutely mental. And look, I think with everything that's been said about Wexford during the week, and with the fact that it was such a humiliating defeat, it wouldn't surprise me for Wexford to actually turn up and really give a good go at this game. Let's not forget, it was only a year ago that they beat Kilkenny in Nolan Park. And Wexford were very close to getting into an All-Ireland semi-final last year as well. They were quite unlucky when they played Clare in that Munster or that All-Ireland quarter-final. So I don't think it's inconceivable that Wexford give a great game to Kilkenny. But I just think, how can you go from being so poor against Westmeath to beating Kilkenny? I just don't see it happening. Kilkenny are guaranteed to be in a Leinster final, regardless of what happens in Dublin-Galway. Maybe they might take their eye off the ball and then focus on next week, and maybe they won't have enough of an interest in the game. But I think even with Kilkenny, they'll probably rotate. Billy Drennan will probably come back into the side, you'd imagine. Will TJ Reid start? That'll be hard to know. But even with that, you've got Billy Ryan, Martin Keown, Adrian Mullen, Alan Murphy, so many options. David Blanchfield might start. Walter Walsh might come into the team. Kilkenny have probably one of the best squads in the country. And to be honest with you, I think they'll relish the opportunity to possibly relegate Wexford. I think they'll be far too strong, in my opinion. So, yeah, I fancy Kilkenny to beat Wexford. I just think Wexford haven't looked right all year. I think it's very worrying for Dara Egan. It's the second year in charge. This is, usually the second year is where you see that improvement. You see teams kick on. So I fancy Kilkenny to beat Wexford by 6 or 7 points. With it being at Wexford Park, there might be a push from Wexford, but I think Kilkenny will be too strong. So yeah, I'm going to go for Kilkenny to get the victory. And I think for Wexford, will they get relegated? It will all depend on the Antrim-Westmeath game. And in terms of the Antrim-Westmeath match, I was speaking to Jason Keelan, big Westmeath fan from the Loaf of Bread podcast yesterday. We discussed the match on the football show. We previewed the game just ever so slightly. He is a Westmeath fan, so I had to get his opinion on that win last week. So we're going to play a clip from that podcast yesterday. We make our predictions in that game as well and discuss that game in a bit more detail. So here we go. In terms of I suppose in terms of Westmeath, the Westmeath Hurlers, I wanted to obviously get your opinion on obviously that win versus Wexford last weekend, and obviously the game against Antrim this week as well, because Like, it almost felt like Westmeath, I suppose, at half time versus Wexford, you were dead and buried, not just in terms of the game, but possibly in terms of the season, because, I know you could have still, beat Antrim, and then obviously they would have went down. But now, like, you've given yourselves the best chance possible. You could lose at the weekend and still end up, avoiding relegation. So, like, it's absolutely mad. And I suppose what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm dying to see text Will O'Callaghan after this. I need to text him and ask what the power rankings are, because I'm insisting that Westmeath move up the power rankings a little bit. But it was so bizarre in so many ways. Like, when you see the list of scorers, as minute by minute, Westmeath had two different scorers all the way up to the last, I think, 12 minutes. I think Kieran Doyle did the vast majority, scored Niall O'Brien then, as well. And you just thought, well, if they get back into this, all Wexford need to do is just mark those two lads really heavily, and nobody else seems to do it. And so, and then Niall Mitchell comes on, and the lad who was doing a bit of work here in the house, an old teammate, clubmate of Niall's, and exactly what I was saying as well is Niall Mitchell could be the greatest hurler on the planet one day, and the next day mightn't run 10 yards. But when you bring him on, you're guaranteed that he is going to cause chaos. It's like bringing on Donaghy or O'Shea, in football for the last few minutes, just to go in there and just throw a few shapes and just knock a few lads around. And the two long balls that went in that he got the goals from were just, like, one was just pure muscle and the other was pure fluke, like that it broke to him behind the defensive line. But we never get any luck. Like, we don't make our own luck usually, and we don't get much luck generally. So to get the break was outrageous. And the lads deserved it. Like, it was the most Route 1 hurling I've ever witnessed in my life, those last 10 minutes, where it was just, once McDonagh missed a penalty, Westmeath just kind of thought, we could, tag a few points back on, make this slightly more respectable. And then they just started launching these balls in from their own 45. Like, they were going miles up into the air. Like, the lads were just aiming straight up into the air when they were hitting them from defence. And you could just see it was just bodies in the square just piling in. And, you can't buy luck like that at the best of times when you're a county who's fighting off relegation most of the time. So to get the win was absolutely insane. It's probably the greatest result, I would say. It's touching on nearly the greatest result in Westmeath GAA in general. Like, I know 4 for the footballers was phenomenal. That was a different year, different time. The hurlers starved of success generally. Christy Rings have been there, it's been great, but at top level, we're not even in the pond with the fish, never mind, anything else. So it was insane. Wexford in the Joe McDonagh, still a possibility. Antrim will fancy their chances against us now on Sunday. They'll go in as slight favourites anyway. They tend to do against us. I still think generally they would, overall game by game, be slightly better than us. They put in good performances. I think up in Corrigan Park, they put in a good performance against Dublin. Put in a few good performances, like, of note. Like, they've never been, bar Galway the other day, obviously, they just trounced on everyone. But they put up good performances against Kilkenny, against Dublin. So yes, Antrim will go in as favourites, but we'll bring them to Mullingar. We'll give them a game here and see what happens. And I have to do the reporting on it, so I'll avoid throwing too many stones at the pitch and Antrim players. I'll have to keep myself quiet for that one. But I still think Westmeath could nick a win. We did that against Wexford with 14 men, 10 minutes left, missing the two greatest players probably Westmeath have had, Angus Clark and Killian Doyle, the two best players we've had, bar Tommy Doyle, probably in the last how long. And it defied all logic in terms of hurling and GAA. So the fact we did it is great, and it'll be forever remembered. It would be lovely now if we kicked on a little bit, even just nick something against Antrim on Sunday, even if it's an unconvincing draw, an unconvincing win, it would be lovely. And it would it would save Wexford, I know, as well, which I do like the idea, because I work with a few Wexford people. I do like the idea of Wexford just been tipped out of the top tier, just to see, how they suffered out of Joe McDonagh. It might make people change their mind about second tier competitions, when they see one of their greats, put into the Grand National for only rounds of hurling. So it might make people change their mind a little bit. But yeah, great day and many more to come, hopefully.
Yeah, like because I'd imagine even for the game this weekend, like there'll probably be a bit of a carnival atmosphere. I'd imagine as well. Like, and the players will probably get roared coming onto the pitch, and there'll be a real feel good factor. Like I'd imagine the confidence, for the opening 10, 15 minutes. Like I'd imagine the lads will be flying now. If Antrim start well and dish out a few early blows, then maybe that's when the confidence might wane ever so slightly. But like definitely with the fans and everything else, like you'd imagine the players would be walking out feeling 10 foot tall, especially after what they done last week.
Yeah, it's funny actually you say that because my cousin, she won. I was doing the commentary for the ladies' minor finals there last week, and my cousin played in the Westmeath when they beat Offaly, and they were presented at the next ladies' game at half time, the Westmeath Wexford senior game on Saturday. And one of my mates turned to me, or one of my mates texted me then after the hurl, who was there with me at that game, and said, "Should we get the Westmeath lads at half time to like be presented to the crowd, for beating Wexford?" Like, it's that big a deal here. Like, people who may not know, like, diehard Westmeath hurling fans, there's so many of them here, and lads who know different to any Galway, Kilkenny, will give their life for hurling and get no rewards out of it. And that essentially was, for many of them, winning Liam McCarthy, because it's a surreal moment, and to do it in the manner they did, like, completely defied logic. I don't think Matthew's come up with a stat yet to prove that it's not the greatest, biggest turnaround in hurling history in the championship. I haven't seen anyone. Yeah, I haven't seen anyone. I know there was league wins that have been slightly turned around, bigger turnarounds, but carnival atmosphere. I'd expect Cusack Park to be pretty full, or at least the stand side full anyway, which it nearly is for the hurling game. So, and the cameras are going to be there, and it's going to be big for them, and they're going to be under the spotlight now to see if they can follow it up. And it's new territory for them, and that's where, going back to Joe Fortune saying we don't want moral victories, I see why he doesn't want them, because we're used to taking moral victories and trying to build on them, and most of the time not building on them and getting slaughtered worse the next day. But now we have an actual victory to go by. It could be a turning point in Westmeath hurling. It's not going to turn us into Galway or Kilkenny overnight, or Limerick or whoever, but it's there. That will forever be in the records to say Westmeath Miracle. Yes, that's exactly the title you should have gone for. Good. It's there, and it can't ever be taken away. Like, it should be. I know this sounds, one game, and it sounds like, God, like, how bad are Westmeath? But it's not that. We should frame the photos from that and put them. There's plenty of pictures in the tunnel in Cusack Park going into dressing rooms. It should be stuck up beside them. Like, it is that big for us, and it could be life changing. It could be hurling changing for Westmeath going forward, and it's just amazing. I still haven't quite got over it. Like, genuinely, when the lads were texting me, these WhatsApp groups were hopping, going, "Are you watching? I was going, watching what? Like, we've been murdered." And it just turned around. I don't think it'll happen again in the distant future. I don't think you'll ever see a turnaround like that in between a perceived minnow team in some ways and a team that was challenging for the All Ireland, semi-final not that long ago. So yeah. Is that someone say bizarre? Is that I think that's the word I would use as well. I can't think of any other word to describe it. Insanity. It was the definition of insanity for Westmeath. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results each time, but it actually worked. We were doing the same thing for most of that game, and it didn't work, and then suddenly it just started to work. So, it takes something miraculous, and that was our miracle. Was it miracle at McDonagh was the Ryder Cup? We'll take the miracle in Wexford, or the Chadwick's Park, whatever it is down there. So, we'll take another one on Sunday now as well. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
And you reckon? What do you reckon then? Will he beat Antrim, nick it maybe?
I'm going to say we will. I think frees have become so crucial for weaker teams. I'm going to call them weaker teams. I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but I think for us it becomes so crucial. Like, Killian Doyle would knock over 10, 11, 12 frees a game generally. Even in the slaughterings, he'd still knock them over. And it's become a big thing for us to be able to have a good free taker to keep us in games, even if we are behind. And I can see us getting a lot of frees. We'd be quite physical. We win a lot of frees in games. We tend to win an awful lot compared to other teams that I've noticed. So I think we could sneak it, and it could come down to a free on the sideline near the stand, last puck of the game, and we could sneak it that way. And I'd take that all day long. I think it would be even better than winning by 5 or 6. Funnily enough, just to win it in such drama like we did the last day, to do it again would just boost the energy even further. But I'll go with us by 1, the barest of victories, but I'll take it.
Yeah. Like I fancy is as well. Like I think it might even be a draw. Maybe might nick it by 1 or 2 points. I just
The
think
miracle of Mullingar, we'll call it.
Yeah. Who knows? There might have to be a statue maybe outside Cusack Park or something of some nature. Really, if you do go and pull it off. But yeah, no, I fancy about 1 or 2 points. Like I just think, to be honest, I haven't seen enough probably of Westmeath or Antrim to really give an actual accurate prediction. But like I just think that like if you like after doing that against Wexford, like surely like the buzz and the excitement amongst the players, and I just think they'll start that bit better, in my opinion. But so yeah, as I said there, I fancy Westmeath to beat Antrim. So I think Westmeath will stay up, and unfortunately for Antrim, it's very harsh on them. I don't think they deserve to go down, to be honest with you. But unfortunately, they haven't won a game in the Leinster Championship, whereas Wexford obviously beat Antrim, and ultimately that will be the deciding game that relegates Antrim. So harsh on Antrim. Would like to see Antrim get a result just so it relegates Wexford. I think it would be funny to see them in the Joe McDonagh. Nothing against Wexford, but it'd just be mad seeing them in the Joe McDonagh next year, in fairness. But there we go. I think Westmeath will get the victory versus Antrim, and unfortunately for Antrim, they will be relegated. So as we were saying there, we do have the Joe McDonagh Cup Final, and it will be between Carlow and Offaly this weekend. As you can see, Carlow finishing on top in the group. They actually beat Offaly as well on the final day, and they're the only side to finish the Joe McDonagh Cup season unbeaten. So very interesting stuff from a Carlow perspective. I did not expect them to be as strong as they were, and there was actually a part of me that felt that they would actually possibly be closer towards relegation to the Christie Ring, as opposed to actually being promoted back to the All-Ireland Championship or getting to the Joe McDonagh Cup Final. And you'll see even on screen there, like Carlow beat Offaly 129 to 14 points. Now, Offaly did have the Joe McDonagh Cup Final place already wrapped up, but the fact that they actually beat them as comfortably as they did was very, very impressive indeed. In Offaly, you have the likes of Brian Doigan, Owen Cahill. You've got Kieran Burke playing a fullback, Killian Sampson and Jason Sampson, two very good players as well. And Carlow, you sort of have the more mainstays, Marty Kavanagh, Chris Nolan and John Nolan have looked very good as well. Look, I'll be honest with you, I don't know a huge amount about either of these two because we haven't really seen any highlights of the Joe McDonagh at all this year, which obviously Don Logue's been banging on about, and it's been quite disappointing to be honest with you. Look, Carlow did win the Joe McDonagh Cup back in 2018, and look, you wouldn't rule out Carlow. There seems to be something building again with Carlow, like the fact they were unbeaten in all their matches. Like they beat Offaly by a huge margin as well. Like I know Offaly, you'd say probably didn't have much interest in that game, but that was a huge margin of victory. I feel like Offaly do have better players and they're building towards promotion. I don't know, to be honest with you. It's a very hard one to call. I think I'll edge it to Offaly. I think I'll edge it to them by 1 or 2 points. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt for that last game in Cullen Park. Like, it was a huge victory for Carlow. Like, you look at that scoreline and you say, like, that's more than just a win. Like, that's an absolute beating. But I'm going to say Offaly, like, a lot of their players were obviously probably focused on the Under-20 Championship, probably didn't play or feature. They do have a very young side, Offaly. So I'm going to say a lot of those players will be back in the team, and I think they will have enough to edge Carlow and beat them by, I'm going to say by 2 points, and I'm going to say it goes to extra time, and possibly, I don't even know if this can go to penalties, to be honest with you, but I think, I'll go with Offaly by 2 points. In terms of player of the week and bet of the week, in terms of player of the week, very hard one to think of off the top of my head. I would probably go with, I feel like Jake Morris is going to have a big game versus Waterford, albeit, I feel like Tipperary probably won't need to be at their brilliant best that day. In terms of Limerick Cork, I think the player of the week will probably come from that game. You're looking at Patrick Horgan on the Cork side of things. If they are going to beat Limerick, he's going to have to be at his absolute best. And from a Limerick perspective, I'm gonna go for Gerard Hegarty. Like, I think he needs a big performance. He needs a big display. We just haven't seen enough of him at all. And I think he's gonna produce this weekend. I think I said that a couple of weeks ago as well, in fairness, and I was completely wrong. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Gerard Hegarty as player of the week. And in terms of bet of the week, always hard to call the bet of the week in the championship, albeit we've seen Westmeath produce. It'd be interesting to know what the odds were on that, in fairness, especially at halftime. If you would have got some odds if you actually did place any money on Westmeath to come back. I feel like Dublin beating Galway is a good one, but again, I don't see it happening. So maybe Dublin beating Galway will be the one. Carlow beating Offaly, you might get good odds on as well. But yeah, there we go. We'll go. Well, player of the week will be Gerard Hegarty, but let me know your thoughts in the opinions and the comments down below. So yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know your thoughts on this weekend's games. Let me know your predictions as well. Very excited for this weekend's championship action. I'll miss the games in the Munster Championship because I'll be at the Dublin Roscommon game in the football, but definitely be keeping an eye on it as the games happen. But do let me know your opinions in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you all again soon.